A variety of things to talk about, primarily having to do, and then we'll open up for questions, but primarily having to do with some opportunities to release some funding out into the community across New Hampshire. I think as a lot of folks know, we have now one of, if not the strongest economies in the country. Everyone is looking for employees, so if you are a job seeker, there are a lot of job lookers. As well, so a lot of employers that are really looking for folks, a lot of opportunity. So first, what I want to do is to provide an update on the CARES Act funds. If you remember, the CARES Act funds are the emergency funds that were allocated to New Hampshire over a year ago. New Hampshire spent those dollars very quickly, I think very wisely, helped sustain our toughest times during the peak of the COVID crisis. Last year, if you remember, I established the Main Street Relief Fund to help small businesses from going under and sustaining themselves through some very tough times. Within weeks of announcing the program, we were able to administer over $340 million to small businesses across the state. About over 5,000 businesses actually were able to take advantage of that program. And that expedited and very targeted approach, without a doubt, paid off. Most small businesses remained open and operational and avoid permanent closure and layoffs. In fact, as a result of the action of the state, frankly, an amazing statistic: less businesses closed in 2020 than closed in 2019. And I believe we're the only state in the country where that actual phenomenon actually happened. So it was very successful, and we were able to keep a lot of those businesses viable. And at the time when we announced the program, we made it clear that grants would be based on gross losses. So if you were estimating a loss of revenue for the year, you could apply based on those estimates and receive some COVID relief, just grants, COVID relief grants based on that. Had we not decided to base the grants on revenue losses and on net revenue or COVID-related costs, things of that nature, the unfortunate consequence would have been that businesses would have had to wait months and months to receive their checks. So we found a very simple, very fast way to get the money out. And it worked. It worked very, very well. But that brings us to our announcement today. That's just a little bit of background into what we're talking about today. It turns out, because of, I think, a very data-driven response to COVID, many businesses expecting a loss in revenue, they obviously ended up having much better years in 2020 than they even did in 2019, which means they didn't actually lose money, and in many cases made a lot more money. Unfortunately, under the Federal CARES Act rules, the federal rules that come with it, the state is required to recoup any unused relief funds. So if businesses received funds for lost revenue but didn't have lost, and ultimately didn't have lost revenue, the federal rules say that we have to recoup that. I have sent a letter to the Biden administration this week asking for more flexibility for our small businesses in this respect. The state does not need nor want to take that money back. Let's be very clear. We aren't looking to get the money back, but we are stuck with those federal limitations today. So we have a plan. The recouped CARES Act funds that will have to come back to us could ultimately be in excess of $50 million. That's a lot of money and a lot of opportunity, but we're going to re-release that money back to the community to support other unmet needs of small businesses, still staying within the limitations of that CARES Act, but there is opportunity to get that money right back out. The team at Gopher is currently finalizing the details to reinvest back into New Hampshire, but the bulk of the opportunity will be as follows. First, we're putting together a program for businesses to submit COVID-related expenses regardless of their total revenue. So in many cases, revenue might have gone up, but businesses may have incurred a lot of different expenses as they relate to COVID. We can create a new program, and we're going to actually look at those COVID-related expenses and regardless of revenue, be able to help reimburse for that. This will account for just a lot of those increased costs that businesses had to bear. Second, we know tourism is really at the heart of our economy, especially over the summer. The federal government launched an SBA restaurant revitalization program. It's great. It's a federal program directly targeted to restaurants because restaurants and lodging were clearly hit amongst the hardest across the country. But their plan, the federal plan, doesn't include lodging. So we're going to do it ourselves and creating a hotel and lodging fund that will be up and running in a matter of weeks, where specifically hotels and lodging that were hit especially hard through the pandemic can apply to the fund. Not going to be exactly what the SBA does, but kind of New Hampshire's own flavor of it, something quick and easy to help a lot of these businesses that took an extra large hit over the COVID crisis. And third, aside from the recouped Main Street relief funds, we're also going to provide some additional financial assistance out of the CARES Act to live venues that were excluded from applying to the federal shuttered venue program. So again, the federal government created their own direct investment into what they call shuttered live venues. A lot of ours aren't allowed to apply for various reasons. They're excluded from it. But again, many of those businesses are the cornerstone of their communities, and we want to be able to help them. So we're going to be launching our live venue program, which was very successful last year. We put about $15 million into live venues. It could be playhouses, it could be larger venues, it could be a little bit of everything. But we're going to see who applies for the federal program, and then our job is to really cover some of those unmet needs. And that will be launched in the coming weeks as well. And those three areas are really the bulk of how we're trying to get the last and remaining and the recouped CARES Act dollars back out the door to help many of our small businesses across the entire state. On a kind of a similar but a secondary path, another update we want to provide today is for everyone is on the so-called American Rescue Plan. On March 11th, that bill was signed into law out of Washington. It includes nearly $1 billion for the state and possibly up to $450 million for cities, towns, and counties. Despite its passage back in March over 2 months ago, we still frankly have absolutely no guidance from the federal government. Very frustrating. So we don't really know how we can be allowed to spend these dollars. Instead of waiting even before the passage, when we knew that it was possible, I started meetings with legislative stakeholders so we could really work collaboratively to finding key areas of need in the state to target these potential funds. As folks know, I'm not known for being very patient with federal bureaucracy, so the time is now. We hope to receive the first half of the state allocation next week. We hope. That's what we've been told. We'll see if it actually happens. And our team has reviewed the legislation and its potential uses. We just don't have those details of guidance out of federal treasury. But we do plan to use these one-time funds in a way that has the greatest impact to reduce some of the other local cost burdens and local taxes that our citizens face. So it's an opportunity to reduce the tax burden on folks all across the state. We know that a lot of other states will have to use these funds to maybe plug budget holes, or a lot of states have very poorly managed unemployment systems and things of that nature. They're going to have to plug those holes. Here in New Hampshire, we're going to create opportunity, and we're going to innovate, I think, in a very creative way to again, make these infrastructure investments primarily across the state so our local taxpayers don't have to face some of those burdens. Some of the opportunities that we're going to be talking about, that we have been talking about, and what we're doing is putting them on the front burner so they are ready to go as soon as we get the guidance. First, clean drinking water infrastructure. Huge need across the state. Senator Chuck Morris has done a phenomenal job over the past couple of years, making hundreds of millions of dollars of investments in clean drinking water. But with the PFOA, PFOS issue in a lot of our drinking water systems, it's kind of getting bigger all the time. We're not waiting for a problem to be a crisis, and we're making those investments. We're going to continue to make them, and it looks like we can as part of these investment funds. Broadband expansion. We were one of the only states in the country to even try using CARES Act money for additional broadband last year. We spent about $15 million. It was a great program. Got thousands of people hooked up on broadband. We're going to keep going, and we're going to be very aggressive about it with some of these funds that potentially are coming in the next month or so. Mental health services. It's always been a need. We've never taken our eye off the ball, and we have some real opportunity for some of the infrastructure surrounding mental health that we can make, whether it's in beds or community-based needs that are there. So it's going to be a priority of ours. And state parks. A lot of infrastructure needs and kind of deferred maintenance over time with our state park system. State park system is kind of the core, if you will, one of the foundations of our tourism industry. And when that system is working well, when we have these updated services and amenities, it really helps the entire communities that surround them. So we feel very confident that we can make investments in these areas with these funds. Still awaiting that final guidance, but we wanted to give folks a sense of where we were going, how we were going to invest this money, that we weren't just waiting around. As soon as the dollars hit hit us, we're going to make sure those contracts can go out, the dollars hit the street, and do our best to move it as fast as we could with the CARES Act. The CARES Act had a lot of flexibility with it. There's no doubt about that. These dollars don't have that flexibility. It's more of a Washington down type operation. So we'll see ultimately what comes. We keep asking for more flexibility from the federal government, and so we'll see what actually comes at the end of the day. One more piece along that same line, and then we'll open it up for questions. The last item of the day really surrounds housing. As many folks know, you may have heard over the past day or so, the Federal District Court in Washington, D.C. recently invalidated the CDC's eviction moratorium, which was set to expire on June 30th. So the moratorium on evictions potentially could go away very, very quickly. There are a few steps to finish in that legal process, so nothing is final yet, and we're going to keep monitoring it out of Washington. But as a result of this potential uncertainty, we wanted to first be sure we were reminding everyone out there of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that is currently up and running. It has been running for a couple months now. It helps people in need cover either past due or future rent payments, as well as utility costs like electricity or internet or relocation services. Eligible tenants and even landlords can apply to these funds, and you go to capnh.org. You can see it right next to me here. That's the website you can go to find the CAP agency in your area. There's 5 CAP agencies around the state that are administering these funds. A very small fraction of what we've been allocated has been taken up, but the money's there, it's available. But clearly I think approximately $200 million has been allocated into that program by the federal government. Right now we have maybe not even 10 million taken up by that program. So we're going to have a lot of money left over. Earlier this week, based on that, I wrote to Secretary Yellen at the Department of Treasury and the Biden administration urging flexibility on how those federal dollars can be spent so that we can just use them to use those housing funds to ensure our most vulnerable populations have access to safe and affordable housing. We just need more flexibility so we can design a system for New Hampshire's needs, as again, opposed to that very strict top-down Washington process. Currently, we can only use those federal funds for a limited set of circumstances. What do we want to use them for? We do want to use them things for actual investments in affordable housing, or creating incentives for public-private partnerships to encourage the development of housing. Reducing the risk to developers and lenders, or incentivizing and designing a benefit for socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. Right now we can't do any of that. We can only provide rental assistance, and in New Hampshire that's just a limited pool of individuals. So having the flexibility so we don't lose that money, having the flexibility to reinvest it for the infrastructure we need would be very, very helpful, and we're pleading with the Biden administration to let states design their own systems.